That's your style. That's your Bond model.
It's condensed.
Because I spend all that time looking at my phone.
302, let's get this going.
Tess, sit down. Hey everybody, y'all ready?
Thank you for coming.
So what we're doing here is we are reflecting on AdHouse books. Chris Pitzer, publisher of AdHouse books. There are 4 of us here who were published by him, and we're going to do our best to make him cry. We just want to tell nice stories, reflect, let him say what he wants about his time in the business. I'm the moderator. I'll introduce myself and then these other people, and I'm gonna do me and then the other end because Chris sat next to me. I'm gonna let him be last because he's important. My name is Andrew Neal. I used to own Chapel Hill Comics in North Carolina, and I sold the store in 2014. I met Chris when I was a retailer. Now I self-publish an ongoing comedy soap opera comic book series called Meeting Comics, and AdHouse published a collection of the first 6 issues. Down at the other end, we got Sophie Goldstein. She's an award-winning graphic novelist, illustrator, and comics instructor living in Tulsa, where she's a Tulsa Artist Fellow. Her comics include House of Women, An Embarrassment of Witches, and the AdHouse published The Oven, which was shortlisted for the Cartoonist Studio Prize, won an Ignatz, and was one of Publishers Weekly's best books of 2015. Next to Sophie is Max. I will not mention, I've known Max since he was 12. That might embarrass him.
Max has no last name, too.
Max Huffman. I was getting to that. Read the whole paragraph before you edit. Max Huffman is mostly a cartoonist and illustrator in Carrboro, North Carolina. The rest of the time, he's the print graphic designer for the Cat's Cradle and the assistant director at Peel Gallery. He has self-published a wide range of hilarious comics, including Hypermutt, Funky Dianetics, and Big Drink. AdHouse published a collection of some of his comics called Cover Not Final, which lost an Ignatz Award this year.
Woo, congratulations.
Got Kurt Ankeny next to Max. Kurt is an award-winning cartoonist and painter whose work has been featured in Best American Comics at the Society of Illustrators and in Comics Workbook. His comics include In Pieces, which was excerpted in Best American Comics 2017, Saltwater Snow, which won the MoCA Award of Excellence, and the AdHouse published Pleading with Stars, which collects many of his shorter comics. Next to Kurt, Chris Pitzer, the publisher of AdHouse books. He has deep roots in comics, having worked at Eclipse in the early 90s. He's also an accomplished graphic designer, which you can see when you look at the books he's published. He designed those. He's closing up shop at AdHouse, having published 101 publications from comics to graphic novels to art books, and has been nominated for and won far more awards than I can list, including Eisner's Ignatz's, the LA Times Book Prize, the Doug Wright Award, and my favorite award on his list, the Best Bookmark. I'm going to start things off, just tell a little story about my history with Chris Pitzer and AdHouse, just to get us going, and then I'll step back and guide the way if I need to, otherwise I'll just let people talk. I met Chris when I was a comic retailer. I think we were both on a comic professionals forum, and I contacted him about Project Superior. I enjoyed a bigger percentage of the work he published than any other publisher out there, and was able to sell it well too. I did great with Project Superior, with Mesmo Delivery, with those James Jean books, and more important than all this to me is that I got to know him. I'm doing it to me. I got to observe him over the years. I got to observe Chris over the years at comic conventions and at signings at my store. And
what was it, the best signing of all time?
I think when I closed my store, we had the greatest signing of all time, which he attended with Jim Rugg and others. Is Jim the only AdHouse published one at that?
No, Tom Schioli published American Barbarian, but I never published Ed Pitzer.
Never published Ed.
Yeah.
And I observed that Chris was always kind. He listened to people who talked to him, always happy to contribute to a conversation and to teach without teaching them, if you know what I mean. He's one of a couple people I have known in comics who I have been impressed enough with their behavior toward other people that I have tried to emulate in my own way, because, you know, I just have always appreciated the way he deals with other people. I think it speaks to his kindness and his easygoing attitude that I consider him more a friend than a teacher, having said all that. So I also appreciate that he published me. That means a lot too. Now, is there anyone else who wants to go next, or should I pick somebody?
I'll go next.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Okay, so can you all hear me without me having to lean over to the mic? So one of the things that I wanted to say about Chris, and I think that it's something that, I don't know if it gets overlooked, but it doesn't get mentioned enough, I guess, is that Chris had a huge influence about the way that comics, especially indie comics, look today. Like the stuff that was out before AdHouse started up was very much still in the vein of the underground comics of the 60s and anything that was sort of like bits of...
I'm sorry. Hey, guys in the booth, everyone can hear you. Thanks.
Thanks, Sophie.
Please continue.
Thank you. I shouldn't have laughed as hard as I did.
But anyway, so like if, you know, like especially for the younger folks in the audience, or even, you know, it's hard to keep track of like indie comics because it's so diverse and it's just so spread out over time and over the space of the country and whatnot. But, you know, it definitely came to my attention when AdHouse books started publishing. Nobody's books looked like these books. These books like just were so next level compared to what was out there, and just like the details for the printing and the quality of the stock, the presentation of the comics, it really was like comics putting on its tuxedo at last. I just feel like that doesn't get mentioned enough, in my opinion, and I really feel like that's the biggest part of Chris's legacy, in addition to being an all-around nice guy and publishing some of the, you know, biggest names in comics, that he really changed, like all those arty comics and all those everybody that's like, you know, paying attention to what shape their corners are and what card stock they're on and what Pantone colors there are, that's mainly due to Chris. So.
Thank you, but I mean, there were people before me.
I know there were,
yeah, like
but...
Dean Motter was a wonderful designer. You know, Fantagraphics had a few good people there, yeah. But no, I appreciate your kind words. But the other part of that too is everybody's caught up. I feel like you look at Piao now,
yep.
These other, like, I think it's what, Glacier Bay? Yeah, really beautiful looking books. And I think it's just everyone's elevated design within the comic realm.
Right, well, because when AdHouse books started putting this, everybody else was like, well, we have to catch up.
I think you're just saying, I'm old, right?
Yeah.
So I was so old that I was one of the first
nice
people that...
roundabout way of
Thank
saying
you.
you're old.
Are you
Thank
going
you.
to admit all of our compliments?
Yeah, I'm old. Yeah.
He's going to deflect everything.
Max or Sophie?
I'll jump in. So I think, I mean, my personal story probably, I think, represents a lot of other young artists and Chris, but when I was first going to conventions and I had my mini comics and I would like go up to publishers and be like, please take this, with my compliments, sir. And Chris was encouraging and was like, and remembered my work from the year before, and at a certain point when enough of these awkward givings had happened, you said, you know, if you ever have something you're interested in getting published, you should reach out to me. And you said it very casually, but of course to me, this was like my world exploding with possibility. And, you know, and so The Oven was my first published book, and it was a really great experience working with Chris. Like, he accepted the story was already completed, and he accepted it fully. He had the one feedback on content was like, I had this very graphic birth scene, and he was like, libraries might not carry it if you show it. So I just slightly changed the angle, because I do want my book to be in libraries. It's not bad. It's a good thing.
I visited my local library, and that's my one takeaway. She had Jason Little's book that had come out that had a birth scene, and they were not in the library, they were in her office, and she's like, I know it's weird, but we can't show birth. So that's why I wanted your book in libraries as well.
Yeah, no, it was it was good feedback, but in terms of design, there was a lot more back and forth, and I learned a lot from that experience of doing my little cover designs and getting feedback from Chris and like putting together this like very slick looking little book here.
I have a blog post about it that shows Sophie's like 30-some thumbnails, and it's just, if you ever want to, it's a nice design post, and check it out, because she proposed like 30 different cover designs, and we went through them, and I think we ended up with a good solution.
Yeah, I think that all of the limitations that we had, because at first I was like, maybe we can do full color, and you're like, well, one color, and ultimately it really made the book though. I think that it like was a limiting choice that actually turned it into like a visually much better book, and so it was great, and I think that that's probably reflects the experience of a lot of like new artists who Chris has published. So.
And so, to her point, I brought a learning moment with me. So black plus a color. If you don't know about her wonderful book, it's about a world where there's two suns, and so constantly you have sun rays hitting you, so the second color is orange. And to get the most out of only using two colors, Sophie started using screens. And when you use screens in printing, one of the concerns is you might end up with a moire. So the way to check that is you go to the printer that's doing the job and you have them do a wet proof. And what a wet proof is when they take the files and they print on the actual paper. And so this is the real paper, these are the real files, and I got this, and I was like, wow. No, seriously, I was like, this looks great. And what I ended up doing was, I think I printed 1,000 more than I had planned because the book looked that good. But that's what a wet proof is. And if you're doing screens and stuff like that, you should definitely have the printer make you a wet proof. It's a little bit of money, but it's worth it in the end because you don't end up with a book that's messed up. Did you want this, Sophie? I just pulled it out of the AdHouse archive like a month ago. Yeah.
And I'll also say regarding Sophie's work and mini comics, and Chris, I first found your work, Sophie, because I was at an SPX, and Chris showed me The Good Wife, and said, you should go get this. This is the best thing at the show this year. And I went and I talked to you, and I bought all the comics you had, and it was because of his recommendation, his recognition of what you were doing.
You make good comics. I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
This is backfiring entirely. You're like, we're gonna make Chris cry, and he's making all
He's
this.
like,
nope.
He's just too good at his job.
Yeah.
He's just a tier man.
I first met Chris at Zine Machine in Durham, North Carolina in 2017 or 2018, 2017 maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah. It's a
So long ago.
Yeah. That's it's a very small show. It's very regional. It's a great show, but by some stroke of luck, I was placed with my punk friend next to the AdHouse table.
Yeah.
And Chris was so stoked by the idea of new young cartoonists, and that's something you truly rarely see. And he bought everything on our table, despite the fact that most of it was very bad. And it felt like a door had been opened. There was a friendly face, and I think I pestered you a couple times in the following years with just like, here's this new thing, and you'd be like, okay, cool. that's cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks. And then during the pandemic, I started putting together old comics, and I redrew a bunch of old comics and work that had existed in the same kind of fictional universe over, like some that went all the way back to college, and I just sent this PDF to Chris with a placeholder cover that just said cover not final in big brush strokes, and I said, hi Chris, here's this. I don't know what you want to do. I have it in my head. as this like Archie collection, and like my dream, and I know this is crazy, but my dream would be to have it like an Archie digest on the newsprint, and it's full color, and I know it's and it was just like, okay, all right, we can do it, but one condition, we have to keep the title Cover Not Final. The name of the book needs to be Cover Not Final, or it was a joke, I believe, but it was the correct joke, and it was the correct title, and I was so glad because it was just going to be something like Crime Digest or something, you know. And everything else, it was like, can it be full color? Okay. Can it be on newsprint? Okay. Can it be on like the Archie Digest newsprint? Yeah, I'll go find some. And I was just so geeked. This book is like exactly how I wanted it to be, and it just I couldn't be happier and grateful. And
I've got the Archie Digest at the table.
really,
So after the show, come by, I want to give it to you. I mean, I just have it there. It's not like I'm doing anything with it anymore, so it's yours. But I'm glad you mentioned the Zine Machine show, because I'm almost certain that was like the only time I was like the baller dude, where I'd come and give me one of everything. It's like I wanted to like be that guy to someone like you and see what happened. So I think like you were there for like half an hour, like thinking, how much do I charge this guy? You were like adding it up, and then you're like, $40 sound okay? I'm like, yeah, no problem. But yeah, no, industry, I don't know how much people know, but if you have a book coming out and it's out there for solicitation, more than likely, if the cover's not done, it's called Cover Not Final, so everyone knows not to look for this image when the book comes out. And I Googled it, nobody ever done a book called Cover Not Final, so I was like, let's break that wall. Be the first. Good job.
Trendsetters.
Trendsetter.
it's also just like such a kind of, not a gamble, but it's to give a never published author a perfect bound full color book with like some nice production touches is just such a commitment and such like a statement, and I'm just really appreciative.
Again, you make good comics. And with Cover Not Final, honestly, when I read it, I laughed out loud like 3 times. And I was like, that's the litmus test, you know, it's like, if I'm laughing, I think other people will laugh, so why shouldn't it be published? If not by me, somebody would. But I like the opportunity to do it.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if someone else would publish. Especially now.
Yeah, you're right.
And you didn't put a belly band on.
I did not. But you know what the effed up thing about it is, though?
What's that?
I tried to get tricky with his ISBN and put it like in that weird ass shadow shape
Yeah.
on the back cover.
Yeah.
It's not scannable. It does not work.
That's
But I never heard stores complain. But I like tried to scan it and I couldn't get it to work. But at that point I was like, who
It's
cares?
done,
Who
whatever.
cares? Let it roll.
I used to give Chris trouble as a retailer about belly bands on an ongoing basis. Belly bands are the little,
Flimsy piece of paper.
flimsy piece of paper, like a partial dust jacket that wraps around, and when you slide it in and out of a shelf, it gets destroyed.
Yeah.
And they can be very beautiful, and retailers hate them. I don't mind them now that I'm not one, but I had to. I had to at the time.
He's completely right though. He, at his shop, had a copy of Driven by Lemons, which had a belly band, and God bless you, it was taken off, but that belly band was destroyed.
Yeah,
And like, as a customer, I doubt I would pay full price for an inferior product like that.
right.
So you're completely right.
Right. And it was a question of attraction versus function in that case, I would say.
Yep.
I mean, I also tried to get a hold of people at Vertical with the Buddha books, like,
Yeah.
stop doing this,
Yeah.
stop printing them matte white so they're destroyed, but they didn't listen to me. You sorta did.
I stopped.
You pretended.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the things I find interesting about the way Chris operates is that, like, I think, like, Sophie and Max's stories, that I found you, like, really, really easy to work with as far as, like, design back and forth. And you have such wide-ranging, eclectic tastes. Like, I'm curious, like, did you ever have one of those books that was just a beast to put together, or you and the artist were just at loggerheads or whatever, and I feel like you're so easy going with that.
No, I mean, the book that took me the longest to publish or produce is the Paul Pope book.
Right.
I mean, that's because it's Paul Pope.
Right.
But I feel if he hadn't come to SPX and we sat down in whatever, restaurant was up there
Yeah.
at the time I made a map and we said, okay, this section goes here, this section goes, if we hadn't done that, I don't know if the book would have ever happened. But that's like the hardest one for me to get out the door. I mean, design-wise, there wasn't a lot of back and forth. It was more the editing of,
The content.
I need this content in a certain order, and
Yeah.
just to get it done.
Yeah. Because how long was that? How long was that process?
I want to say it was like 2.5 years, and I mean, that means it was probably late by 2 years.
Right.
But, yeah, and I mean, with your book, I mean, mostly your design, but I think this was I love the color field suggestion.
Yeah, no, that was
Of
great.
just like these beautiful, like just pages that are just color to like break things up.
Yeah, that was all Chris. So like the exterior was Chris is like, give me your cover design, and I've done my own books before. I've published my own books before, mainly because of some of the knowledge that I got from like Project Telstar when Chris published it. He would have like a little information in the back that said like, oh, this was printed on this press with these Pantone colors on this paper, and
Did you print it too small for yourself?
No, it's very thin type, but we did the same thing here.
yeah, well, because I was like, that was so important for me as a young person, and like as somebody who was interested in graphic design. It was a little bit of a peek behind the scenes that nobody else was doing, and like I was so interested in these books, and it sort of demystified a little bit of the process. And I said, so when we came to doing this, and Chris had this great idea of flooding the opposite page from the title page of each individual story with a nice bold color, which was just right. And I was like, well, we should do that with my book, because I love that. And he's like, I have no recollection of doing that.
300 GSM, da-dong, is the cover stock.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite thing about the credits page is the little heart.
Yeah, that was a really nice little touch.
The takeaway is if you're a cartoonist and you think you're thinking a lot about design, you're not thinking enough about it.
Well, and to that point, honestly, if you are publishing something, get some other eyes on it, because you're too close to it. You need a new set of eyes to like possibly see things that you aren't seeing. So,
I'll say, having worked with Paul Pope once as an art director on something, you're lucky to have gotten the book out at all.
I'm serious. I mean,
That
if that SPX hadn't happened, I don't think the book would have happened.
It took me half a year to get one cover out of him. It was good. It was exciting.
He's a rock star, man.
He was almost done the whole time. It was very exciting.
Final tweaks.
Yeah, exactly. He was coloring it for 3 months. When we got it, it was black and white. It was super cool. I'll say about the design work on mine. My book happened really quickly because after Chris and I decided we were doing a collection of my comics, he asked me if there was a particular show I would like to have it out for. And I said, how about Noise in Norfolk? And he said, well, that's in about 3 minutes. Get it to me, get me the cover like in 3 days, and we can have it ready for that, because it was a really short turnaround. And I said, okay, and I knocked out a cover. I spent the entire time kind of going back and forth with him on it, and I appreciated the fact that he made that happen. He could easily have said, there's not enough time. You need to put the effort in to get this better, and we'll get it out for some other show in the future. But he knew that I really liked that show, and that I wanted to have the book out for that. And it turned out to be, essential to get the book out like 30 minutes before COVID hit. So that was, it showed up February 2020, which meant I got one show with it until this year.
The door shut.
It was the door shut right there. So maybe that's why I got it, because we rushed it. I don't know. But I really did appreciate the fact that he was willing to work with me to try to get the book out in time for the show I wanted it out for. I thought that was more than most publishers would have done.
And if you're not familiar with Noise, that's like a small SPX show in Norfolk, Virginia, put on by Greg at Local Heroes. And I love the show. I think it's great.
Yeah.
February?
It's in February,
Yeah.
so it's cold.
And there's no other shows then, so you can get down there, find a bunch of cool stuff.
It's in a brewery,
You
so
got it.
people's judgment is impaired, so they buy a lot of your comics.
Yeah.
Which is why I wanted to
Very
set up.
much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know?
You wouldn't think there'd be a beer goggles effect on comics, but
But
there is.
it kinda works.
Absolutely there is. Yeah, it's a good show.
They get them home and they realize they're not all in 3D. I think maybe one of the greatest and perhaps final gifts that Chris has given us is that he published right up to the end of AdHouse, which gives like 5 different cartoonists the selling point being the nail in the coffin.
Right.
Who killed the company?
Oh, tell the Catherine Eminem story about Grass Parnassus, about how she.
Hey, who's the moderator? Tell
Sorry.
me about Grass and Parnassus.
Are you talking about what I called them?
What, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so essentially, I don't know why I thought about it, but I counted up how many books AdHouse had done. And I was like, we're getting close to 100. So we had sort of said that we would publish Grass and Parnassus, which was originally published on Instagram. And so I said, are we inked? Are we good on this? And they said, yeah. I said, so it's the 100th book. And by that I mean, numbers can be fudged this way or that. You can read however many ISBNs we have, but it's close enough to 100 that it's 100. And so you're the 100th book. And then I was like, there's one other book, it'll be 101. And I was like, you know what, I'm kind of done. So then I had to call them. I was like, listen, can we do a phone call? And they're like, sure. And so we set up a phone call. And I was like, listen, I know we agreed to do Grass and Parnassus. We are doing it, but I am done with AdHouse. I want to shut it down. And Catherine got the sweetest, giggliest, yes, we're the book that killed AdHouse. And I was like, if you want to think that, I'm totally fine with you thinking that. But they are such sweet people that they, I guess, cherish the idea that I knew when to say enough was enough, and they were happy about that.
Yeah. Well, and Stuart did such a good job of giving you fan service on the design of that book. It's covered with pluses.
Right, yeah. It's a good one to go out on. It's like the most eminent book I feel out there because
Yeah.
if you like to read a book from A to Z and have that story spoon-fed to you, it's not that book. This book is confusing as hell, but it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
It's art.
Yeah.
But it's such a left turn from most science fiction that's out
Yep.
there in the world,
Yep.
And most people probably know them from Stewart's superhero stuff,
Yeah.
which is really
Marvel and DC.
accomplished and straightforward. This is absolutely not that.
But yeah, if you ever check it out, there are little AdHouse logos all over and spot gloss on it. So it's nice little art object. That's it, I think, right?
That is.
We want to cut it early?
No, we can, does anybody else have anything particularly they wanna bring up? I'll take questions if there are any, and if not, we'll talk some more.
Yeah, do y'all want to say anything else, or we get straight to questions? It's up to you all. Questions?
Anybody wanna ask a question? Yeah.
What advice would you give a small publisher seeking wider distribution?
What advice would you give a small publisher seeking wider distribution?
I mean, honestly, if we're talking direct market, the only distribution is Diamond. So if you're not doing Diamond, you should be talking to Diamond. They're not going to give you the best numbers because you are a small press. But other than that, then you start teaming up with distributors who distribute work like yourself. So like Domino, who else? Radiator, thank you. Yeah, Radiator's great. We did a comic called Viewatron, and Radiator is debuting the second issue here at the show. And Neal was kind enough to reach out to me to get the paper type. And so essentially to keep the library for Sam and Peach the same for their book, and it made it happen. It came out. Yeah, it's right there. Craig has a copy. I mean,
It's bigger than the first issue, though. It's taller.
nuh-uh.
Uh-huh.
Somebody messed up.
That's some Pope shit.
That's some Pope stuff. Yeah. But I mean, anybody else, other distributors you can think of? Yeah, Birdcage is great. So I would get, copies there, and because then your work is getting out to like-minded people, I assume.
Yeah.
Maybe Silver Sprocket.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're fantastic too. They're a store in San Francisco.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone?
I have a-
Craig. Oh, I'm sorry, Sophie.
Yeah,
No,
please.
audience first, please.
No, no.
Me? Oh, okay. So Chris, what for you was like the first impulse to become a publisher? Where did that desire come from?
It came back to what Kurt was saying a little bit, where I love book design. And I don't know if you know this, but I was doing book design before AdHouse, but I was doing it for free. And so at that point where I was made aware of Pulpitude Pilgrimage, I actually sent that out to like 3 publishers. I sent it to Fantagraphics, Dark Horse, and Top Shelf, saying, because I knew them from SPX, and I was like, listen, this is a good book. You might like to publish this. And of course, nobody got back to me. So no, with that, I went back to Joel and said, listen, should I start a publishing company? Because why shouldn't I get paid for my book design, right? Not thinking that, oh yeah, I'm spending a lot more money than I. But no, I love book design. So, I mean, that was the impulse to start that, and having worked at Eclipse Comics, I had a little bit of knowledge there. Made contacts where if I did have a question, I could either ask Jeff Mason from Alternative or Ted Adams at IDW. So it was all those things. Not knowing any better.
Ignorance is bliss when
Yes.
you get into comics.
Yeah. No, to that point, I mean, I still have copies of Pulpitude because I printed way too many. 20 years later, I still have copies. So if you're thinking about publishing, just whatever you think you should publish, maybe do only 75%,
And then cut it some more.
and then cut it some more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my first book, which was a collection, my first self-published book was a collection of this webcomic that I did. And we were like, okay, we'll print 1,000. We did a Kickstarter, and then I was like, well, it's only like a couple grand more to print 2,000. It would be foolish not to. Fast forward.
How many pages is this book? It's a big book.
Yeah, it's like 360 pages.
Hardcover.
It's hardcover. They're 12 to a box. One
Yeah.
box is 12
Oh.
books. I still have like a storage unit in Pittsburgh that I've not seen the inside of for 4 years that has just a stack of these books. And I don't know whether I hope that they're all filled with mold or hope that they're still fine. Just to be free of the burden of these books. But anyway, you should all learn, don't do that.
Mold would be a tax write-off.
Yeah, really, just burn it down.
Open the door, throw some water in, shut
Yeah,
it.
yeah, a little HBO Max action. Yeah, nice.
Craig.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on the last question about distributors, which is, my sense also is, and certainly Andrew would be one example of this, that individual retailers would contact you for AdHouse books too. Is that a good venue for distributing your books as well? Or?
It definitely is. You build up your clientele of who you can work with and trust and do business with. But it's like if you step back and look at the number of them, you kind of get depressed because it's pretty sad. And just like me quitting AdHouse, there's retailers that either go on to the next life or just decide to not do it anymore. But it's an option, but it's not a feel-good option. Not that Diamond's a feel-good option. That's not a feel-good option. But yeah, no, we've got, and actually I have an email list, one to the general populace, and then one to retailers. And seriously, I think that list is 33 stores. And I feel like that's not even real. It's probably less than that.
Well, to that point too, about, I was ordering books direct from Chris, but it was absolutely specific books. I didn't order the entire line direct. If it was something that I just wanted to order a couple copies of and give a shot, I would order it from Diamond. I mean, that meant I was more aware of him than most retailers. But for big books, books that I expected to do well with and I wanted a case or two, I would order from him. Or anytime I said, oh, this is huge, let me try to get 50 or 100 copies before he sells through the print run, that hopefully will last me a couple years, then I would contact him for that. But even though I think I probably counted as an AdHouse store, it wasn't every single publication. And I think every publisher probably has that situation where there are things that hit really hard and there are things that hit less hard. That's just
Yeah, and it's like, any sale's a good sale, right? But, and you want the store to get their copies.
right.
But if he also orders through Diamond, that's a cool thing, because that's one more sale Diamond's getting to make them think, oh yeah, we're a publisher that they should still pay a little attention to. So it's like, the end result, you need copies, I'm fine either way.
Right. But well, by the same token too, if I just needed a couple copies, Diamond is the preferred way, but Diamond also doesn't restock things without a certain amount of back orders. And you don't always want to throw a back order at Diamond as a retailer, because it might sit there for half a year before any other retailer is willing to do that. So it's always kind of a guessing game and a balanced situation. All the talk about Chris's design work and the intricacies of it will, I'll talk a little bit about my comics, not these, but the ones I self-publish. Many of the early ones, I did things like, and they're zines, they're mini comics. I get the pieces from a copy shop and I trim them and put them together myself. I would say they're slicker than most mini comics, but I would frequently early on do something like print 4 pages in color to feed in with the black and white pages and show markups and corrections, sticky notes that I had drawn corrections on. And I was inspired by 2 things. One was some of the Chip Kid design books out there, like for Batman Animated, which would show storyboards with sticky notes over them, which I thought was the coolest thing to see. There's a Peanuts book that he also designed. It has shots of original art, but also shots of old decaying newsprint clips. And I thought it was just really cool to see that.
And
So-
also, Jeff Spears, the photographer, and
Yeah.
he never gets credit.
Okay.
He should get as much credit as Chip Kid.
Yeah,
I
the
think.
photographs are
Yeah.
beautiful. It's photographs of art in a book, and it's gorgeous. And then, and I thought, maybe I can do that, and then my other thought was basically like, look at all this cool stuff that Pitzer will slide into a book sometimes. It's completely unnecessary. But that was definitely part of my reason for wanting to do something like that, just to make a mini comic a little bit extra. Because, I knew somebody who did that with other books on an ongoing basis. There wasn't anything he did that was exactly what I did, but it was something that I thought of when I was thinking, do I really want to take the time to hand collate 1 color page into these before I staple them together? And yes, I do.
Yeah.
I want that visual effect. It's worth it because it's going to be cool. And that turned out to be early on one of the things that people mentioned to me about my stuff. They're like, it's really cool how you do this. Why do you do that? And then I would say, here's why. And they were like, oh, I thought it was because it's set in an office and there's sticky notes. But
And I think my, reasoning with all that too is that, what was it, 10 years ago where comics became digital?
yes,
And so Comixology was out there, and we worked with them for a bit, but not that long. And when we axed our relationship with them, I decided, okay, I dig online comics, but I really don't read online comics. So everything I make, print-wise, I want to be an art object.
yes.
So it just becomes a little bit more special. It's appreciated a little bit more. And I don't know, it's just, it's out there.
No, I think so. I think there are things that, beyond the story, or beyond the joke, beyond the piece itself, that you can do with a physical piece that are much harder to do if you just send a PDF or have it in a web page or in some other digital format. And
Take that, Scott McCloud.
yeah, that infinite canvas,
Yeah.
well-predicted webtoon, right? But that's that. Anybody else got a question? Yes.
What's next for you?
We were thinking the same thing.
I got to read a bunch of comics that I own that I haven't read yet.
See some shows.
Yeah, and then, I don't know, it's like I have a huge collection personally. And so I think, maybe at my age of 55, it's time I need to let some of that go. So I've thought about setting up at the regular shows, and maybe even SPX if they have me back. Like if I came to SPX, I'd want to sell just mini comics. All the mini comics I've purchased over my lifetime. So, I mean, it's like I've been thinking about that. I'll still help other publishers if they need design or, ideas or anything else like that. There's like a couple books I'd like to see happen. But yeah, it's like you never know if they're gonna happen or not. So, that type of stuff. Walk the dog, take it easy.
Just come to SPX and set up an advice booth like Lucy. Just like, come on.
Just a
I like it.
couple of chairs, couch, just.
Yeah.
The doctor is in.
Yes.
Yes.
Is InDesign the best book compiling software you've found, or do you use something else?
I'm old school, and I'd have to say yes. But I mean, I was a Quark Express guy for ages. But it's like, once I was forced into InDesign, there's some pretty cool features in there. One of which is, let's say you lay the book out, like your 24-page book, 8.5 by 5.5, 1 to 24. You can go down to print and say, print pagination, or something like that. And it takes every page and flips and flops them, so it prints out the way, it should, so when you fold it, it reads in order.
Right.
So it's like, back in the day, I would make a dummy, 1 through 24, and figure out where every page goes, and then have to lay it out, and you have two different layouts. And with InDesign, you only have to have one layout, and it does it. So, I mean, if anyone has any other suggestions, I'm all ears, because I am old. So, I'm not on the cutting edge. Any other?
InDesign CS6 is the last one before they went to the cloud, and just say it's out there.
I hate subscription model. I mean, it's so much wasted money on our part and so greedy on their part. I totally love that you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a Photoshop that I don't even know what number it is. It's prehistoric.
Is there anybody even competing with them in software? Like, I
Clip
mean,
Studio.
as far, what's that?
Clip Studio.
Yeah,
But as far
I feel
as like,
I
they're
feel like
about to
Go
go assembly?
subscription.
They're getting better. Actually, if you have it on a computer, it is you own the software, which is
Oh,
great.
okay.
They're not a subscription, but they're getting better. Like every time they do it, they're making more options to actually do layout and stuff. So they're improving their software every time they give us a new release, and it's been pretty good. You can actually do a full comic and then have it all ready for print now.
They did announce that for Clip Studio 2, they're doing a subscription model.
For the regular one?
Yes, but they might not because everyone was mad at them at the end.
Yeah, cause I'm like,
Since
I've
when
had
was
it
the
for about
company
5
gonna
years.
do that?
Yeah.
I feel like that company does pay attention.
Celsius, yes, I
Yeah.
think they do. Because a lot of the changes to this version of Clip Studio came out of suggestions.
Yeah,
They
They
still
pay
don't have
attention.
CMYK mode though.
yeah, that's gonna change.
I have a question for Chris, and maybe it's something you don't want to consider. But what happens to the artist, Chris? What happens to the artist of the type of which AdHouse published? What avenues do you see for them going forward
Where do we go?
in today's
What do you
market?
do?
What are we gonna do without you?
What do you mean, where do you go? You're at Fantagraphics. Josh is at
It's not the
Fantagraphics.
same.
It's not the same.
Those guys are old too.
Yeah, they are.
Let me present the question in earnest. What avenues do you see going forward for artists like of the type you publish?
Where, or in other words, where are Fantagraphics and Top Shelf gonna get their people now that you're not digging in the sewers for gold?
I appreciate Kurt saying that. The first draft of my pitch for this panel included the recognition that that many of the artists Pitzer has published have been ruthlessly snatched away by other publishers. He's the first publication for so many important, known artists, cartoonists, who have gone on to do work that's highly considered. And he has so frequently been the first publisher, the one who's like, oh, this is good, and it's like a flag goes up, and everybody else is like, oh, I want them now.
I am the stepping stone, in
Yes,
other words.
exactly.
Yeah.
The bush league,
But, Hartley Lynn will go to D&Q.
yeah.
Who else do we wanna know about? I think the Eminents are done.
Yeah.
But honestly, yeah, no, I mean, I don't feel like the selection is great. Koyama's gone, Kiao's going. I mean, there are people I don't know, because again, I'm old. I like Glacier Bay, but I feel like they have their own thing going on from what I saw upstairs.
I think more people will self-publish early
Yeah.
works that you would have published.
Yeah.
Because it's getting easier digitally,
Yeah.
at the least, to put it together. I don't know if some kind of dystopian thing will cause the cost to roll back up in a way that it's not feasible anymore. But in the meantime, it's a lot easier than it ever has been to self-publish something that, if you have design ability, looks like is a professional grade book, even with some print-on-demand services. So I think probably a lot of people who Pitzer would have published will self-publish if they get out there. But that takes a different type of mindset than just somebody who wants to make the thing.
But it's also like, and it's also skipping over that early validation that like
Yeah.
those young cartoonists will get
Sure.
by being actually published by somebody else. You know, it's one thing to publish yourself, and it's quite another feeling to be published by
You
somebody.
just gotta love yourself, Kurt. That's what it is.
I think there's probably many very talented cartoonists out there who will never become largely known because they don't have the appetite for
Yes.
self-promotion and self-publishing and things like that. And so having publishers who are willing to take that chance on a first-time author is always going to be really essential, and hopefully other people will step into the void.
I think that's enormous, yes, that's a great point. And I mean, even I, who had all decency driven out of me by 20 years in retail, who would say anything to sell my book, felt so good to be published by him. You know, it is very validating. Anyone else got a question? Yeah.
Chris, can you tell me what happens in book 2 of Duncan the Wonder Dog?
Excellent question. No.
How many did he say he was gonna do?
9 volumes. They weren't all gonna be 400 pages. You know, I've sent him emails and I've gotten no reply.
Wow.
So,
He's probably working on it.
well, yeah, that's it, he's working on volume 2.
He's coloring
He
them.
sends
as-
his answers to Fantagraphics.
Well, and then, you know, my answer is not it, right? It's like somebody else can publish it, and that's great. But, thank you all for coming. This is wonderful, I love you all. Comics, SPX, hey!
We're all set up there too, if you wanna come buy books from us. Kurt, Chris and I are along the wall there at W 47 through 49 next to Fantagraphics. Where are you, Sophie and Max?
I'm sold out, so.
Humble brag.
I'm at, table K6, next to Cram Books.
Dig into the storage unit.
That's all in Pittsburgh.
I think that was good.
It was good, I had a good time.
That's great.
Thank you very much. Hey, you can sell that, Sophie.
Chris, you're.
We got one more copy. Quick, everybody.
I appreciate it.